Welcome to the World of Joan. Now, I posted on my blog talking a little bit about my grandmother, my mother, and what things was during the Depression. My mom was born in 1932, so I'm telling off on my age. So, and my stepfather, who raised me, was born in 1934. And they tell me about things that happened during the time. Now, my mom's parents did a lot of sharecropping, but also my grandfather stayed gone quite a bit of time, having to go out and find whatever work he could find to be gone for months at a time. So living fell back on my grandmother to take care of 5 children. And she would tell me about some things. One time she was out hunting and she seen a rabbit. She shot 2 rabbits at the same time. So, they depended on living off this land. Within months after the Depression hit and so many people lost their jobs, they depleted the woods and everything of the game. And other game went so farther deep in the woods. Now, the difference between then and now, 80% of the people, I would say, still had knowledge of how to live off the land, had knowledge on how to harvest wild foods and things. That is not the case now. So, if we did fall back in depression, what would happen? Would we create the hobo camps as we did before? Would we go around looking for the jobs? The things has gotten so much stricter now that we wouldn't be able to do things. My mom told me they woke up many a time with snow on their beds where they was living in a sharecrop house, and they all had to sleep in the same bed together, just one bed to share. And now, that's of course is a no-no. You just don't do that anymore. So, and then I remember hearing other stories about people telling me, how they had children. Their 12-year-old son would go out and find work. He'd be working somewhere in the fields or whatever he could find, to bring food and money home for the families. They did what they could to survive. Many of them did not have electricity. They used oil burners. We've gotten so spoiled and used to the computer, which I like my computer, don't get me wrong. And we've got used to our cell phones and used to the benefits of the lights and the comfort. But what if we don't have it no more? What if it gets back in the depression times again and you can't afford to be paying for lights and you can't afford it? I love watching old movies. I mean, old movies in the 40s and the 30s and all that. I love watching about that time period. There was this one old movie. It was a musical, a black people musical. And they lived without electricity and stuff. So he turned around, and he treated his wife by cutting the lights on. And she was so excited that she was going to have lights on in the house. And he bought her a washer, an electric washer. And she was so excited because she went from having no lights in the house to using candles and kerosene and having a hand wash to having this electric washer, which was an old wringer washer that you sew the clothes in. And I helped my grandmother with her wringer washing machine to wash his clothes and to wring them out and grate them out and hang them up. There was such a difference during the Depression time. People was not out trying to kill each other all the time either. There was more of a sharing, a community of working together and getting by. You hear about the hobo camps in New York and different places where they was set up at just to survive, and it was a community of them working together. So there was a difference back in during. It wasn't about going in and killing someone over a can of beans. They knew more how to live off the land and do what they did. Not saying it was easy, because my mom said they would take the potato sack and make underwear for them, and she said they itched and they just irritated so bad, but they had to have what they had. They didn't have a closet full of clothes. They had one good clothes to play in, and then they had one for church. They only got new shoes when it was time to go to school, and most of them didn't even finish school. Most of them had to drop out. I came across an outfit in an antique store made out of newspaper. The women would take paper and make them dresses for church, and they would paint them, and they would take it and pour the paper down and roll it and make little layers. This was a beautiful outfit that someone took a lot of work and effort to make it so she could have something to wear to church. And then they would walk. They walked for miles at a time because they had no choice in this. It's not like you can just run down to the grocery store and get something. So for them, Sunday dinner, you would hear about Sunday dinner. Sunday dinner was the special dinner. That was a dinner when you put the chicken on the table or whatever, because most of the times these people was living off of beans and cornbread or potatoes or whatever. They had harvest or whatever they could hunt. You know, like I said, my grandmother went out hunting and all she could find was a crow and she shot it. My mom said the more we ate that old crow, it was stringy, it was nasty tasting. The bigger the wall got, more you chewed and more you chewed. But she did what she could do to feed her family. So, if the Depression happened today, I don't think people would be the same. I don't think people could make it. I think a lot of them would end up killing each other over a can of beans. I think a lot of would end up starving to death within the first year or two because they have no idea how to harvest food or raise food or put food up. They have no idea on what to do about any of that. Um, I think also a lot of them, we are very dependent on medications and stuff. And if we no longer have that medication to take, then our health is going to deteriorate rather rapidly, unfortunately, because diabetes is on the increase and other diseases on the increase because of the fact is that our children are heavy set now more than when we was growing up because they're not as active as was. And on top of that, even if they are active, it's the food that we're consuming. It's so high in calories and high in fat and it's high in processed foods that we are overloading our body at a young age. And it's happening to the older people here. Uh, we are actually shortening our lifespans by consuming a lot of these foods here by not being active. Now I'm not a small person, and I'm limited on what I can do physically, but you know what? I still get out and I exercise, and I still try to take care of myself, and I still cheat and go to down to the restaurant and get something to eat. But I also eat my own food at home, and I don't have no problems going out harvesting my own food and fixing it. I have no problems with that because it's actually better for me, and it's not raised with any bug spray or anything on it. It's totally organic what I raise. Now, I made a mistake by not putting a fence around it, and Boo ran over most of my plants this year, but that's okay. You got to learn from your mistakes. So there is a difference in between now and the Depression. I've listened to these people talk. I love listening to old people talk, mature people talk. That is, I listen to them telling me about how they would have to walk all the way into town. And my late uncle, he was a little short Irishman, and his wife was this big, huge woman. But he was scared of everything. He was one of those that was just scared of everything. He had to have a chain. So it did not mean he could just get in a car or whatever and just drive into town. He had to walk several miles into town. So as being scared he probably wasn't no more maybe 5'2", 5'3". It started getting dark. And he had this big old heavy chain wrapped around his shoulders and neck, and he was walking along, and he was dragging the ground. And as it got darker, he started hearing this chain clanking anymore. So his imagination ran away. Maybe that's why I'm so creative in my mind. And he goes running, 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 hollering at his wife, Satan is chasing me, Satan is chasing me. And she just looked at him and says, honey, it's the chain you got around you is what's chasing you, not Satan. So, that's the difference during the Depression. They had to work together. They had to walk. And I would hear stories how they would always have the door open for someone that was hungry. If that person was hungry, most of the time they would just come and do some work for them just to have a meal. So that's the difference between the Depression and what could happen now. If we went into the Depression now, I don't know if we could make it. Be honest with you. Most of us don't know how to live off the land. Most of us are city people. We're used to going to the store. I have debates with my friend all the time. She can't understand why I want to have extra stuff. I just dehydrated me some celery, and I'm trying to get her to dehydrate things and put things up because her income's not coming in like what says put food up. Dehydrate this and save it. Quit running to the store every 2 days or 3 days, and think about what you can have for the winter months because you're sitting there talking about how high it is. Then figure out how to put it up and do some canning or something up for yourself. And she, I just can't get her to budge on it. Even if she just put up a few cans, during harvest season, go buy some tomatoes and cucumbers or whatever, and made her, 2 or 3 jars of pickles or 2 or 3 jars of tomatoes and stuff, and she could have that for the winter months and save her money because she's on a limited income now. Unfortunately, most of us has no idea how to do that, and that's the sad truth on it. I do not think if the depression happens, and I think it'd be a lot worse if SHTF does happen, as we talk about it, it's a possibility. I think it's going to be bad. I don't think we're going to have the community working together. I don't think we're going to be able to have an open door policy and feed someone come along that's hungry and put them to work because we have changed so much. And by being computers and telephones and TVs and all this other stuff, we have exposed ourselves to things. There's games and there's more things out there now than it used to be that we are aware of, and these people are become a very cityized people. They have used to living, 8 million in a city. That 8 million in a city is going to fight to survive, and they're going to kill each other, unfortunately, to do what they got to do. We may not tomorrow have uh, a job, and I don't right now, and I'm needing a job desperately, and I need to find one. I'm looking, and I have no money coming in, and I'm worried about what I'm going to do. But I said, God's going to take care of me is all I know. So I don't. If we go into the depression, it's not going to be like the good old stories you hear from your grandparents and your great grandparents and all that. That how things was and how they did the open door policy and how people topped the trains and how they lived in the hobo camps and worked together. I I don't think it's going to be like that if the depression happens again. I think it's going to be a lot worse because back then they didn't even know what gangs was. I mean, gangs happen in the large cities, but you had still so many much smaller towns and people who lived off the land and farmers and ranchers and people, knew how to survive and they had the open door policy and they took care of each other. I just don't think it's going to happen now, unfortunately. There is people that will pull together and will survive, but there's also those out there that's going to try to take what you have. So, that's the sad truth is it's not going to be good. I just hope the depression don't ever happen like that. I hope SHTF doesn't ever happen like that. But if it does, you know, we're going to be in serious problems. So, you know, from the world of Joe, I do want all of y'all to be safe. I want you to be happy. Bless you all.